Welcome back to Spiro Avenue, a very rare Sunday morning show. Not something we normally do here. We're a bunch of night owls. Ben and I don't know if Ben, my producer, has even seen 10 a.m. in like 6 years. I don't know. He may have to weigh in on that, but
to be honest, I haven't been up this early since March.
And it shows in your voice. You look a little lethargic today, but you are here. You have the graphics ready to go. And this is a good one, Ben. This is a kind of a different avenue for us, no pun intended. Michigan State University Brian Mosallam is Michigan State University trustee. Brian Mosallam is a legendary figure up there, as the trustees are, almost mythical. And he is in studio, easily the most accessible member of the BOT up there in East Lansing. So I just want to say welcome to Brian Mosallam joining us in studio.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you, and you have this reputation of you answer emails. People can get you. You know, the other trustees, I'm not going to ask you to cast any aspersions, but not so accessible. Maybe not going to respond at all, but certainly not soon. You're quick. You're available. So I appreciate you being here. There's a lot that we can cover, but I think my audience, for the most part, is a sports audience. Now, you have a big election coming up. We all know that. For those of you who don't know, now you know. So you're on the cusp of that. You're running for re-election. We'll get to that later. But my audience, I think, is particularly interested in your involvement, to whatever extent it was, in the Michigan State football coaching search that took place back in February. I'll take everyone back to February 4th, 2020. It seems like 6 years ago, but it wasn't. COVID has been crazy, but it wasn't that long ago that Mark Dantonio was still, in name, if not practice, the head football coach for Michigan State University. February 4th, he announces his retirement on Twitter the day before National Signing Day. We were shocked. I was shocked. I thought he might be in his last year, but once we made it to February, I thought, okay, we got him for at least one more year. When did you first hear it? Did you find out when I did on Twitter? Did you know beforehand?
I don't, all these timelines run together. I had heard that there were rumblings, but no, I really didn't. I didn't have any inside information that he was walking out that day.
So you found out when the public did, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I heard, you hear from internally, but it wasn't. I mean, when it was official for you, it was official for me.
And that's interesting, because the fact that, like, the trustee on the board for Michigan State, which is arguably the most involved board of trustees, certainly in this state, I mean, maybe in the entire Midwest, if not the country, that you were blindsided by it too. I mean, you didn't see it coming. You found out when I did and when everyone else did on Twitter. I mean, when you did find out, were you shocked? What was your reaction when you did find out with everybody else? I mean, you said you had heard rumblings, but were you still caught off guard?
Yeah, I was caught off guard. Calling me the most involved. I don't know if it's
not you personally. I'm saying the board as a whole. Yeah,
we'll get into that. But if your specific question, where I was caught off guard. Yes,
yeah,
I was
caught off guard, and just with how it was handled, there's a lot to unpack there. Obviously, some people said he was just hanging on to get that January bonus, which, frankly, I wouldn't even begrudge him for. If it were me and I were in that situation, I probably would have negotiated with the university just to help them, time it better and say, hey, I think I'm done. Can we maybe just get that check, and I'll give you guys a month more notice to get a jump on my replacement. But neither here nor there, how it was carried out. Did you have any issues with it, the timing of it, the day before signing day?
I'll tell you. So I went to Beekman and said, if Coach wants to go, we'll get the board. There's a support to pay him. He's earned that money. He's deserved it. So if they're, let's not look at this January 15 as a deadline. I think the timing obviously was rough for his staff, to find jobs, since all those jobs were filled as well. It probably wasn't the best way to do things, but I mean, he wasn't just, he couldn't go into schools and continue to avoid the question, living in the present, and he didn't want a gap year with recruits, and it hit him when he went to recruit, because he had every intention of staying, but when he went to recruit, he didn't want to mislead the kids, and he sat there and he felt that I just can't do this. This is not right. to sit here and he didn't want that gap here. So I see his point of view too. Where when it finally hit him, I fully believe that's the case.
So you don't think he was in a room somewhere like twisting his mustache, saying, I'm going to get away with that, whatever, with that big bonus, and he knew all along he was leaving. You think he really was trying to stay and just didn't have it?
Absolutely, there's no question about it.
Okay.
We could have got him the bonus, and he's earned it. What he's done for the program is remarkable. I also think that he's a very honest man. I mean, he really, and his staff. I mean, most of his staff were caught off guard. So that was a really a moment he had where it was with recruits, and he realized. He just can't keep saying, I'm living in the present. I'm living in the present. So all that's real, all that's true.
Do you think anything changed? Where he had been saying just a few months prior, he was talking about in front of the media, I want to complete circles. And my father always taught me to complete circles, and our work's not done here, and I'm not going to leave until this program is back up off the mat. I don't presume that puttering around at 6 wins was what he meant by a completion of any circle or getting back off the mat. It was implied, back to competing in Indianapolis. Do you think anything materially changed? Or was it just the span of time it just wore him out and he realized the fire wasn't there?
I think I have every intention of coming back. I mean,
But what shifted that though?
I think recruiting. I think going in and seeing these recruits, and he told me, he said, I just, I didn't want that gap year, and I couldn't lie to these kids. I couldn't keep saying, or not lie. Lie is the wrong term. I just couldn't keep saying I'm living in the present. I'm living in the present. And that really bothered him, because if you look at the timing, if he was going to leave and if his intentions were to leave, he would have did it so every one of his coaches could have found a job during that cycle when it's open after the season. So that was a real life moment for him where he realized, it's time to move on.
And the whole thing was so out of character for him, and you said exactly the reason why, that he really cared about his coaches. Some would argue, and I would be among them, to a fault, to where, the program is flailing and just a shell of what he had built. And instead of making changes to the coaching staff, he would just kind of shuffle the chairs around and, shake them up and, okay, you're the receivers coach now you coach the linemen or whatever. And so he was loyal, many would say, to a fault. So for him to kind of hang his coaches out to dry, I do think that was not a twisting the mustache. He was plotting to get that bag of money from you guys in January. I think he probably really did say, I'm going to have another go at it. And he just flat out didn't have it. And that's where I would defend him. I will say there's some things that
First of all, you don't got to think. That's the truth.
Oh, well, great. This is why you're here, because you know a lot more than I do.
Trust me.
Because I'm just a guy sitting in my basement talking about this stuff. You're actually in these meetings. You talk to these people.
No, that's 100% true. 100%
Okay.
true.
So we can clear the record on that it's directly from Brian Mosallam, Mark Dantonio. It was the best laid plans, and the guy just, for whatever reason, it wasn't there anymore. And it was not, because that salacious rumor was kind of out there that he was very upset with certain figures up there and was mad about how the coaching search was being handled for his succession plan. Ultimately, not in the moment, but ultimately he wanted a say in it. These are rumors. I'm not reporting that, but that's the kind of stuff that was out there. And, I know Rico Beard, who's, now on 97.1 The Ticket, had said basically that Dantonio was intentionally sticking it to the university because they didn't like how they were treating him with his succession plan. Obviously you're disputing that, right? I mean, you don't think he was trying to stick it to Michigan
I love
State.
Rico, but that's not true. It's not even close to being true.
Okay, well that's good to clear it up. Now here's what
there's a lot of rumors out there, that
well,
I read and but that's what happens when you leave room for conjecture. I mean, when you're not, just transparent or about a process, or you go radio silent for 3-4 days about an issue, and you just Twitter goes to fire and everybody just starts with the rumor mill. I mean,
yeah, and that's exactly what happens. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the movie The American President, and there's the scene with Michael J. Fox, and he's with Michael Douglas, who's the president, and he's just saying, no one needs to listen to these rumors. I'm the president, and people will make their own judgments. And like Bob Rumson's a crazy person, no one's going to buy that. And Michael J. Fox says, look, if you don't defend yourself and actually give some clarity of message, they're just going to believe whatever's out there. There's no counterpoint. I think there was a vacuum up there, and I think there's been a vacuum up there for a long time. I mean, we saw it all the way back with the Tom Izzo thing when he had the flirtations with the Cleveland Cavaliers over a decade ago now. That was, after 09 or 2010, whenever it was, 2010, where Lynn Henning from the Detroit News is getting into a battle with him in the press conference. He's yelling at Lynn Henning, and Lynn Henning basically said, look, we had radio silence from Michigan State for 7 days of this, and it was the biggest story in the state of Michigan, certainly on the sports front at that time. So I do think Michigan State has a little bit of, and I love Michigan State. Spartan diehard, you're sitting in a cave of Sparta here. I'm not. I'm certainly no anti-Spartan, but I do think they have a reputation for being kind of cagey, where some transparency a message would be helpful.
I don't find it cagey. I don't agree with that approach at all. I don't agree with the Big Ten going radio silent for 72 hours. You're letting people let rumors fly all over. I don't agree with I thought the coaching search, we should have updated people along the way. I didn't see anything wrong with that, so we left a lot of room there for rumors and stuff. And so that's why I've never dodged the media, even the Nassar matter, right? I mean, you look at the board, put their head in the sand and, for the most part, hid behind the lawyers, and I just refuse to do that. So I just think when you can get out and you can control your own narrative and look, be open and honest. I mean, we answer to the public. I understand there are some issues that are sensitive and, need to stay quiet. But I think if you're open and honest about a process and you update on a regular basis, you eliminate all those rumors, all the rumors and all the talk.
And, it's to your benefit to control the message because, again, people will fill in their own blanks. They're not going to stop talking about who's going to be the next head coach at Michigan State University. I mean, it's a Big Ten classic program. So those stories are going to be out there, and you can either control what those stories are or you can let the public run wild. And, you mentioned the rumors going around. But there are certain things that I know didn't happen, and what Dantonio has done and hasn't done in those immediate weeks during and following. The biggest example was he didn't show up to Mel Tucker's press conference. So you're on the heels of rumors all around with no counterpoint from Michigan State that Dantonio has an axe to grind. He doesn't like the way he was treated. He leaves them the day before National Signing Day. A few days later, Mel Tucker's hired. Big press conference. Tom Izzo talks probably too long for like 9.5 minutes up there. It was a hell of an introduction. And Dantonio's not there and is not even mentioned in the press conference until the very, very end when a reporter asks a question about it. Mel Tucker doesn't say, thank you to Mark for what he built. I'm looking to expand upon that and build upon it. Dantonio wasn't there. So you can see you're already going that direction where these rumors are out there that it's contentious. Mark's not there. He's not mentioned until a reporter brings it up at the very end. So, I mean, do you have any perspective on why Dantonio wasn't there, why he wasn't mentioned? Is there a sort of gap there, any resentment at all that you're aware of?
Not at all. The way you put this whole story together just cracks me up because
he wasn't there. There's no story.
I didn't even. It's funny because the seat that I'm sitting in, knowing what's going on, and this whole story you just conjured up. No,
didn't conjure up. Was he there? Was he at the press conference?
Yeah, but it leaves room for conjecture. No, he was not. I mean,
would it not be typical for the predecessor to be there and pass the baton?
I don't know what's typical. It wasn't because he wasn't happy with the process. I think he was tired. I mean, you saw him at his press conference. He looked tired, and he headed to Florida, and he felt like that's Mel's stage. It's Mel's time. He's not going to come there to overshadow any of that stuff.
Then why was Tom Izzo there, though? I mean, Tom Izzo
is the ambassador and face of that university. I mean, there are so many things that Tom Izzo does for that university that you don't even know about.
I believe it. He's
one of the most amazing human beings you've ever seen in your life. I mean, he's miserable and complains a lot and just maniacal, to a certain extent for a lot of stuff. And but in a good way, though. He loves Michigan State. There's an inherent difference. Tom Izzo grew up at Michigan State. He was born and raised there. So he will be buried under the Breslin one day. I mean, he's been there how many years now?
They'll name the stadium after him eventually.
He's given all these years of his life, so there's just a little bit of difference. But I didn't think anything. There's he came to practice. Coach D showed up to a practice afterwards, right?
You can tell me I wasn't aware of that.
There was a piece where he showed up. So no, there was no. I mean, Mel was his. I think maybe it might have missed him so he knows Coach Tucker very well. Not at all.
Oh, I'm sure he knows him. I'll defer to your knowledge. So you know the players and I don't. So I can't sit here and tell you your business because you know these guys. I don't. But the perception is it's odd that Mark Dantonio is not at that press conference. He's not even mentioned. He's the best coach in the history of the program.
Mark Dantonio is I don't know. I don't even remember the program, but he's a very, guarded, private, quiet, unassuming. His personality is where that he's going to overshadow Mel Tucker by coming there.
So sorry, go ahead.
And that's really like the kind of person he is. He doesn't have any interest for the media. He doesn't have any interest for the public spotlight, but he's loved by his players, loved by his staff, loved by, like you said, loyal. And, loyalty is a very hard quality to find. And, sometimes in football that you're loyal to a fault. I mean, you can argue the last year they had 7 tackles, get hurt. I mean, there was 100 different things that went on. But, if there's one trait that I want from somebody, it's loyalty, So that's why I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mark.
Well, and the fact that his players and everyone that's ever worked for him loves him speaks volumes. I mean, I've had Darian Harris, captain of the team in 2015 in studio a couple times, actually. Chris Fry's been on my show, was a captain in his senior year.
Love him. They all love him.
Yeah, great, great guys, and they love him. So that does speak volumes. But, okay, Dantonio's private. He's tired. That's why he's not at the press conference. That's the first component.
Overshadowing.
Doesn't want to overshadow. So, but if I grant you that, okay, he was tired, didn't want to overshadow, he's understated, whatever. We'll grant you all that. How is he not mentioned? The other part over here is why wouldn't Mel Tucker bring him up? Why wouldn't he be mentioned by President Stanley, Tom Izzo? They had a conga line of Michigan State representatives. A member of the board was up there. Nobody mentioned, thank you to Mark Dantonio for all he did. Even just in passing, the perception is, okay, Dantonio's not there. Maybe he is tired. Maybe he's not trying to overshadow people. Okay, that's one component. But the other pillar of that is he's not even mentioned. So the presentation is he retires abruptly on Twitter. The announcement's on Twitter, not at a press conference. He later had one. But the announcement's on Twitter, kind of cold, kind of abrupt. Not at the press conference, not mentioned at the press conference by the other side. So I'm just saying there's no conjuring. Those are facts. The perception, my perception might be conjured, but I think it's based on some factual basis. So you're pretty convinced there's no animosity there whatsoever. Dantonio has $1 million, I think probably cushy job there. It's like a lifetime appointment, which I'm okay with that too. But
I don't know if it's $1 million though.
Well, okay. Fact check on that one, I guess.
Let's go do some fact.
You're the financial guy up there. You're the one that has to rubber stamp the budget. So I mean, that's the report was that it was $1 million. Maybe
that's incorrect.
Okay, the Free Press maybe had it wrong. It wouldn't be the first time that they've screwed something up. Let's face it. But he has a cushy job up there.
I believe that's incorrect. Okay, go ahead.
Either way, whether it's $100 or $100 million, it's really irrelevant to what I'm saying. But what I'm going to ask is basically...
I mean, look, you make a good point because sitting there, I'm so close to it, I'm in that bubble. I didn't realize that he was never mentioned by the AD, the president, and all coaches. I never even thought about it.
He was a ghost. He was like an apparition.
Yeah, I never even thought about that. But I mean, I don't know if you're going to believe me or not. I can't imagine any of that was intentional. There wasn't any bad blood. I mean, there really wasn't. I mean, that's how he is. He was just off into the wind and quiet, and history will remember him kindly. Right now, people might not. Success is fleeting in sports. I mean, you're as good as your last game, and that's how people think. But history will be kind, or I'm sorry, the future will be kind to Mark Dantonio.
And I think. I'm sitting here now being critical, if not simply asking questions about that and the perception of it. I was very upset with him at the time.
I mean, look, I didn't like the timing either. The way he left. Of course, nobody liked the timing. His staff didn't like the timing, but it wasn't like you said. It wasn't some sinister plan. It was, But
it was his timing, though. The timing didn't fall out of the sky.
Timing, absolutely. The timing was.
He chose to do it that day. No one was forcing him to do that.
The timing was yes. Nobody was forcing him. So the timing probably could have been better.
Yeah, and that's fair. So I was going to ask the impact on his legacy. You seem to think. Not much, really. I mean, just in your own perception.
I think short term, there's going to be, obviously the last few years were below par.
Yep.
But I think the long-term legacy is, he's the winningest coach in the history of the school. I mean, Mark Dantonio won at Michigan State the way they said you couldn't win.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
He won the right way. He won the honest way. He believed in that 300-mile radius philosophy of recruiting, and he took the staff, the way they developed kids, and took the whatever you want to call a 2 or a 3-star, and
Yep.
Whoever puts these stars together, but they knew how to evaluate talent, and so the future will be kind to Coach Dantonio.
And I agree with that. I think even now things have sort of calmed down. It's interesting. He was really saved, at least in the short term, if not long term, by the fact that Michigan State landed Mel Tucker. If they had just been stuck without a desirable coach, I think that sting maybe ripples a little bit more into the future. But Michigan State got a landing where even if Mark Dantonio had told you back in December, like, hey, this is it, it's a wrap, these are my last 2 games or whatever, and gave you months of a head start, if you had landed on Mel Tucker with that situation, most Spartan fans would have said, okay, like desirable guy, who knows? I mean, he's unproven, but Mel Tucker would have been a good successor anyway. So I think Dantonio's legacy is sort of not rescued, but whatever taint was there, whatever tainting of that was there, is diminished a little bit by a soft landing in Mel Tucker. So I want to get to that now. But you can't get to Mel Tucker without obviously talking about the process that led him there. So you have the announcement on February 4th that Dantonio is gone. Between February 4th and February 10th was a crazy time. I'm sure you can't lay out the whole timeline. Not only was it 6 months ago, but it was a crazy time where a lot of things were flying all over the place. But in that 6-day period, Luke Fickell emerges as the favorite that the fan base wants, the reported favorite of the Board of Trustees. So take us through the process to the best extent you can remember. At February 4th to February 10th, Mark Dantonio steps down. When do you first start hearing Luke Fickell's name up there? When is he being discussed? Is it right away?
Right away the candidates were identified, and the board had very, very little involvement with the board. None of the board members were on the committee. It was up to the board to approve the selection. Again, where I think that's another process, maybe some more transparency along the way instead of leaving all these things open to conjecture as an issue. But the board was not involved in the interviewing of the candidates. The board was not involved in any of those type of things. And we got the right guy. I mean, at the end of the day, we got the guy. We got the right guy. Especially I think it's so powerful having an African-American head coach. Going into the inner city, going into some of these communities where he can go to these coaches and say, I come from your community and I understand. I mean, it's a very, very powerful thing. You look at Mel Tucker's resume. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, his resume speaks for itself. So I don't think there's any question we got the right guy. That's a feather in Beekman's camp, truthfully. I mean, that's a feather in his cap. And, the only thing that I would say that I felt, was if you update everybody along the way and we don't have Twitter following planes flying to certain places,
You picked up on that. So you you just like give people updates. There's no room for conjecture. People are going to always have questions. But I believe more in, even this, the Big Ten situation, with football and stuff, and we left those 3 or 4 days of radio silence, and it became a circus. You said the committee wasn't transparent with the public, which that's self-evident.
The committee wasn't transparent. I said we weren't updating
updating the public, right. So what I was going to ask is, were they transparent in updating you guys, or at least you? I mean,
you got to understand, I'm different. I played. I have clients in the NFL. I have coaches, and I know a million people. So board members are hearing one thing, but I'm hearing from 100 different people. I'm getting calls from head coaches. So I'm in a different situation than everybody else. Everybody's assuming that I'm in the know. Everybody's assuming, but I'm hearing things from people all over the country because I have relationships all over the country. So it's my situation's a little bit different because I played there and because of these relationships that I have. So,
but different in a good way. I mean, I would think you'd be more plugged in just because of the connections
and I was, and I asked for I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So I did, but I never weighed in, never got involved. I wanted the committee to come back with what they believed was the best recommendation.
Was Luke Fickell the first pick up there? He was perceived as the first choice.
He was perceived as the first choice. I mean, that's that's perception. But I don't remember. I wasn't involved in the committee. I don't know. Nobody ever came to us.
Okay.
Nobody ever said, "Hey, here are our rankings. Here's what." I will say this: the committee did tell us, but Mel Tucker was the best interview. He had a plan laid out. He knew every player. He knew their pros and their strengths and weaknesses. He knew. He had a plan laid out for recruiting that was unparalleled, and he killed the interview. And so we got Mel Tucker would have walked here. We got the guy we wanted.
I agree on the landing. I'm happy with Mel Tucker, and I would take him over Fickell even now, knowing what we know. I don't know about he's a little light on the coaching experience, but in terms of wanting to be here and really feeling invested, he did initially, in a very public and famous fashion, turn Michigan State down. And then the talks moved to Fickell. Fickell was, from what I know, made an offer. It is a fact, and that Bill Beekman flew there and had talks with him and his wife, and theoretically made an offer. That was the report, but it's a fact that he was there. Normally, you don't fly there to talk about the weather. So Fickell turns it down, and then you guys pivot back to Mel Tucker. What's the perception with you guys? You're the money people. The Board of Trustees has to sign off on the dollars, and this was a dollars issue. Mel Tucker didn't have a change of heart because he realized he liked the color green more than he did 3 days earlier. Not that color green. The money green he liked more. The money was what changed. Mel Tucker says no. Luke Fickell turns you down a day or two later. You pivot back to Tucker. What were those discussions like before Tucker accepts? Did you guys feel the pressure, like we have to step up here, we have to land Mel Tucker, we have to come up to the plate? What were those conversations like?
A lot of that stuff you're telling me is hilarious.
What? You keep saying that.
It's just not even close to any of that.
What is not true?
Let's just say that the perception of how all that went down is not true. And
let's lay out what I said, though. I said that Mel Tucker was interviewed.
Mel Tucker publicly turned it down.
And publicly turned down, so that's a fact. Bill Beekman flew to Ohio to meet with Luke Fickell and his wife. They had discussions.
An interview.
There wasn't an offer.
They had to come back to the board to get authorization for an offer.
To approve the offer. But there was. You're telling me no dollars were discussed? Come on. My audience is too smart.
I wasn't there. I have no idea.
But neither was I.
Bill Beekman never came back to the committee, never came back to the board and asked for authorization to make an offer. That was the deal.
I think it's safe to say that Bill Beekman probably didn't fly on the private jet to Ohio to just say, hey, are you interested? You could do that over the phone.
But he flew to interview everybody else too, so I don't know how does that differ?
Okay. Well, what did I say that was incorrect? Because you're saying that it's just, I can't believe what you're saying.
The Bill Beekman did not have authorization from the board, the full board, to make an offer technically.
And that's not really the critical point, though. The point is that Mel Tucker publicly turns you down. Luke Fickell publicly turns you down. These two are facts. They're out there. I can play the clips and pull up the Twitter. They publicly turn you down, and then Mel Tucker was hired literally 2 days after Luke Fickell turned you down. So I'm interested in that 2 days where Luke Fickell publicly turns you down. He goes to his Twitter, does a video saying he's here to stay and his wife loves Cincinnati and all that. Those 2 days, your perception, maybe you can't speak for the whole board or Bill Beekman, but was there a sense of we've been publicly turned down by two coaches. We only have two that we viewed as serious candidates, at least again for the public. But what's that 48 hours like between Fickell turns you down and Mel Tucker's announced 2 days later? Was there panic? Was there a sense of desperation to get it done?
Honestly, I'm not going to get into all the details, but the story didn't exactly go like that. So I didn't sense any panic or any pressure. No
pressure. So, but you did have a sense of you guys offered more money to Mel Tucker than you did 5 days earlier. So you guys had to have. Maybe it's not.
Was there a confirmation that we offered him a specific dollar amount? Did you read anything?
Why would he change his mind?
But I don't. I'm asking you. Was there a confirmation that we offered him a dollar amount?
Well, no, I haven't been outside today, but I assume the sun's out there. I mean, there's certain things that are so obvious. Like, I'm sorry, but. He said no, and then 4 days later said yes. So nothing was changed on Michigan State's end when they stepped up to the plate.
I mean,
you're the transparent guy.
I'm sure they went back to him. Of course, I'm sure he got more money, and I'm sure he got a bigger recruiting budget, budget for his staff and stuff like that. And That's what he needed. I mean, he needed a bigger budget for the staff, and which we agreed to. We approved. We wanted a dollar amount, and this was the range, and here's what we're agreeing to as a board. So Beekman had leeway to negotiate ranges back and forth with but let me just say this. There are some things that I just can't get into.
Oh, and I respect that.
And I will say that we got the guy we wanted.
And I think we agree on that too. I just think the process,
the process, if it's not transparent and being updated, this is the problem. It leaves all that open for the conjecture.
Well, I did a show that one of my highest, rated or viewed, most viewed, however you phrase it, shows was I did a show called East Lansing is Burning, and I was sitting right in this chair, and it was just 30 minutes on how bad this whole thing was botched. Mark Dantonio set him up to fail. You've been publicly turned down by the two coaches that you wanted most, or at least according to reports, and we didn't know what else was left. I mean, there was a 48-hour period where I can't speak for you. You're saying it was calm and cool, and everyone was like, okay, no problem. You guys are sipping Mai Tais or whatever your drink of choice is. The fan base was apoplectic. The fan base was going crazy. I had so many comments on that show. It's still available, by the way. I didn't take it down, although in hindsight it's kind of funny. But the perception was East Lansing is burning, that this thing is, we're going to just give it to Mike Tressel or whatever, and we're out of options. You guys did step up to the plate. The Luke Fickell thing, you were rather publicly involved in the search in the Luke Fickell regard.
Not really. I didn't. I wasn't. How did I get public?
Well,
I was
you went
involved
on
in the search.
No, but you went on 97.1. It was Jamie and Stoney's show, and they're asking you about search. This is before Mel Tucker was announced. It was like the day before, I think. And you're saying that you. Again, I'll paraphrase, but Michigan State does not want a waffling flake. Presumably in regards to Luke Fickell, who had just publicly turned you down the day before. You got some backlash on that. I thought it was, it was fun fodder. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but a lot of people did. It's... How do I want to take this, Brian? That comment was about Luke Fickell, right? I mean, the waffling flake. Is that safe?
No.
It's not safe to say.
Let me ask you a question. Do you want a waffling flake as a head coach at Michigan State University, yes or no?
Definitely not.
Neither do I.
Definitely not. But
neither do I.
But you were being interviewed.
But neither. Hold on. Just so we're clear. and I stand by every statement that I made, and to this day I stand by that. Neither do I. And Mel Tucker would have walked here. So we got the guy we wanted.
Yep. Okay. I mean, again, I didn't think the whole thing was a big deal. I mean, I know people were going nuts at you.
But we got a guy that would have walked here. Let me just tell you that. We got the right guy. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
I agree. I mean, that's fine. So, at the end of the day...
Now, I agree. When you put all those events together and, you leave open for conjecture and there's comments and it looks like trustees are getting involved and so that really wasn't the case. The board was not involved. The board was not on the search committee. There was certain discussions of the process and ranges to discuss salaries and pools for their assistants and, staff and stuff like that. But the board was not involved on that.
So
there's just the perception that because I played football there and that even Robert Sala was in the discussion, who's from my hometown. I know very well.
you know him,
of course.
Yeah,
I've known him. So there was just this perception that I was involved in all that, and it just wasn't the case. I mean,
you had the rubber stamp with the rest of the trustees. I mean, you were holding the rubber stamp, waiting for the committee to pass you the sheet of paper. I mean, is that?
We wanted to see who they brought forward.
Yeah.
Before we made a decision.
I'm glad that you guys approved it. I mean, just I'll take off the journalist hat and put on the Michigan State hat. Like, thank you for making the money be there, because there was a fear that it wouldn't.
And that was something that I thought was very important. That besides money, it's the Lifeline's recruiting, and that the pool and the staff and the help that he needed, we needed to expand that pool. So I made my feelings known on that, but the actual process and diligence, I mean, Alan Haller did a tremendous job. Beekman, say what you will about him. Beekman so far in his first big test has passed. I mean, he brought us the right coach who wants to be here. And so, the future will tell, right? I mean, time will tell. But we're happy to have Mel Tucker. We got our guy.
Yeah. With what we know now, I mean, great hire. Obviously, it could go to Pitts.
Everybody blew up and went crazy when I said, we want a guy that we don't want a waffling flake, and I just asked you the question and you said no, you don't either. And so everybody went crazy, and for about 8 hours, that's all they were talking about. And then the next day, at night we announced Mel Tucker, and I got all these text messages and emails thanking me for defending Spartan Nation. So that's just the way it goes,
Yeah,
in this role.
You were publicly on blast there.
I mean, I was, I was just cracking up just listening and watching some of that stuff,
Did you see Valenti's thing when he was calling you out on his show?
I did. I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think Ben.
I got the clip played up. If you want to.
We're not going to do 12 minutes. Yeah, we'll do like the little just.
Listen, it is what it is, right? You put yourself out there and you make comments.
You were getting crushed for this. So I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I said that up top.
Listen, let me tell you something. This is football.
Yeah.
Larry Nassar, January of 2018, that's crushed. All this other stuff, irrelevant.
I agree. We'll get to Larry Nassar.
I mean, that's when you talk about crushed, you talk about the world's eyes descending on Michigan State for the largest sex abuse scandal in the history of this country. What happened that day for 24 hours, it's nothing.
I agree. But for the sake of the, dunderheads that just like football right now that want to watch, I mean, we'll get to the Nassar stuff, and I think the Nassar thing is really where you shine, and we'll get to that. I mean, do you have I know you've seen this, Brian, but I for the audience, just to get 30 seconds or whatever to see like what the perception was.
And I don't care if Brian, who I've met, nice guy, wouldn't call him a rocket scientist, nice guy, former player, not a rocket scientist. I don't care if he had the best of intentions, can't do it. Bad idea. So what happened? Brian goes on with Jamie and Stoney. And Brian now, you could make T-shirts of what he said. Because it's one of the most ridiculous, damaging, nonsense statements you will ever hear. And this is very on-brand Michigan State.
So that's what where he says it's so damaging, and I didn't really buy it.
I just think it's a little dramatic, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's his job.
He kind of attacked you personally a little bit. I mean, that's
But when you're in a public position like I am, you don't take it personal.
I just got to ask, do you have any relationship with Mike Valenti?
Yeah, I met him. Nice guy. Sure, He's called me for stuff, and we've talked, and I've helped him with things, and but at the end of the day, I actually give him credit, right? Because he was. I mean, he didn't, whatever personal relationship we had or whatever he knew, he didn't allow that to get in the way. But also, I get the business, and I understand, hot takes are hot nowadays. But from day one, I have met what I have said. From the Nassar situation to about John Engler to Joel Ferguson to about the coaching search. That whatever I have said, I have meant. And
we're going to hit every point you said.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of old school in the same way that you are, that I think transparency is good. I think just, from the journalist perspective, like get the message out there, control the messaging. Doesn't mean lie, doesn't mean even spin necessarily, but just tell the truth. But, I hate the term your truth, but kind of tell your truth from your perspective. I actually appreciated that you were.
Listen, Spartan Nation will appreciate. We want a guy that wants to be here. I mean, we want a guy that would walk here. We want a guy that looks at this job as a destination job. And I'm talking in general. That this is a destination job. This is a landing spot. This is not a stepping stone. So, these are the corner. This is the corner. That needs to be the cornerstone of this university. Tom Izzo made Michigan State basketball a destination job. He put us on the national landscape because of the consistency. And so, while in the initial surge, people, were upset. I turned out to be right, that we want a guy that would walk here, and that's Mel Tucker. And so, everything that I have ever said, I have meant. And, you can argue timing, you can argue with, given the circumstances and, the silence from MSU, you can say all those things. But, I've always felt that I just need to say what I believe and I mean everything I've ever said.
So you say, it's a landing spot and you want someone that is looking at the coaching job as a landing spot. My personal fear as a Michigan State guy, someone that's rooting for Mel Tucker's success, is year one, and I don't mean this year, year two technically, but year one full year. He shocks the world, goes 9-3. Year two or year three, however you phrase it, goes 10-2, goes to Indy, maybe loses a close one, and Kirby Smart leaves Georgia, and now Georgia's calling. Or Nick Saban retires, and now Bama's calling. Why wouldn't Mel Tucker go to the SEC? I mean, my fear is good problem to have. If he has that level of success where those programs want him, that's great. I mean, that means good things are happening here. But I do have fear he has been a vagabond. He's never stayed anywhere for more than 10 seconds. Do you have any fear that you think it's a landing spot? Do you have any fear they go 10-2 in year two and he's just gone?
I don't.
You think he's here even with success? You guys are going to step up and pay him the raise if he earns it?
I mean, if I'm still here, if I'm still on the board,
you're going to win in a few weeks. But.
I mean, I hope so. But I have no doubt in my mind he's here for the long run, and there are reasons why that I know that I'm just going to refuse to discuss. But this is. He loves this place. Like I said, I'm going to stay consistent in my message.
Boulder, Colorado is pretty nice. And have you been to Colorado?
Boulder's beautiful.
Yeah, Boulder's
beautiful.
And he seemed to like Colorado. I hope you're right. It's just devil's advocate is like he has.
I mean, we can't deal in hypotheticals. There are certain instances, in which Coach Dantonio is right. You have to live in the moment. I mean, we can't stop. At the end of the day, if people want our people, that's a good thing.
I agree with that, but you're talking to the wrong guy to live in the moment. I'm way too angsty for that, Brian. I'm worried about what's going to happen like 6 minutes from now and
at
10
least,
years
as a trustee, that's our job to forecast and budget forecast and plan for the future and do those things. And, Michigan State's facing tremendous financial challenges right now.
Yes, well, the whole country and these institutions are. I mean, I think Michigan State, and I've said this publicly a few times, is as a fan base, as a community, the most unified I have seen them in a long, long time in terms of the football program on Mel Tucker. Everyone likes it. I haven't heard any pushbacks on it. But most importantly, everyone understands that this is a process. That this team, what are they playing? 8 games? They could go 2-6, and I don't think we're going to see but a one pitchfork out there. Maybe one lunatic.
Listen, Twitter's nasty.
But even Twitter, though, the people seem there's always a few.
Right now, right? I mean, he's winning the tweets. I mean, this is. But if a coach, if something, right now, I mean, you should see like when Robert Saleh has a great week, you could put his name in Twitter and you just, love and admiration. Then gives up a late touchdown, they lose, and just, it's the Twitter is just boom, up, down. It's right now everything's hunky dory. So at the end of the day, we'll see. Yeah,
believe me, you don't have to educate me on Twitter being bad. Someone didn't like my opinion on the Detroit Tigers one time and posted a picture of my wife and was doing stuff like that.
I mean, to me, that's unnecessary.
Of course,
the personal stuff,
it's bad.
Well, Mike Vellani says it, he's a shock jock. He's a hot take artist. I don't take it personal. But
that's a criticism.
But I'm elected.
Too,
I'm an elected. You're not. So,
yeah.
There's a lot of things that said about me that were it's okay.
Yeah,
I signed up for it.
No, and that's fair, and that's a healthy perspective. But what I'm getting to is basically, I think the fan base knows that he can, fail in quotation marks, have a poor record. Let's phrase it that way. In years 1 and probably even year 2, I'm saying I'm not even really starting the clock on judging him personally till year 3. Now, there's some exceptions if the team is like laying down and not even trying in the second halves of games in year 2, that's different. That's like an eyeball test thing. But in terms of wins and losses, I hope they win every game. Not expecting much, really, in the first 2 years in terms of the on-field product. Do you think that the board, I'm speaking for the fan base who seem to be in agreement with me, do you think the board, the big players up there, are on board with this is a process? It's not going to be Rich Rodriguez in 2008, famously featured in John U. Bacon's book, where half the board didn't want him, half the athletic department didn't want him. They go 3-9 in year 1, and everyone just pulled out. If Mel Tucker goes 2-6, is there going to be we got the wrong guy? Do people feel like they're in it for the long haul up there?
Absolutely. The committee came to us and said, this is our guy, and laid out their reasons why. And every trustee said, we're on board.
Everyone's on board. It's total harmony.
And it's everybody.
East Lansing, which you
Everybody's
never
on
see.
board. Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was unanimous. So I don't. We're in it. We're in it for the long haul. And Coach Tucker doesn't expect to go 2-6. He's a competitor, and he's working these kids really hard. So. But it's it's going to be a process.
If he goes 4-4, I think he should win Coach of the Year. I mean, just he had every disadvantage in the book, and the roster wasn't it was a little bare to begin with, but just getting the late start and then COVID hitting. But
it's been a very rough because he doesn't know those kids. He didn't have the spring with him, and very very difficult for him to evaluate his talent. So he's definitely behind the 8 ball in that regard. But I'm quite confident they'll have those kids ready to play. Those men.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Well, they're kids to us, but anyway. So I want to talk about. We'll get off the Michigan State athletic category, and I want to pivot to where I think you really are probably most famous, and where I think, frankly, you shine is the Larry Nassar scenario. Larry Nassar, the whole crisis up there was the low point, certainly in my lifetime, arguably in the history of Michigan State University, for a number of reasons. There was a perception, and you I know you don't like perceptions, that's been clear, but some of it justified based on comments from Joel Ferguson. Joel Ferguson said there's other things going on at the school than this Larry Nassar thing. Lana K. Simon has been doing a great job getting funding for buildings. You're being asked about sexual assault victims, and you're talking about Lana K. Simon's fundraising skills to build a new science center. Not great optics. That happened. I'm not making that up. Lana K. Simon is pressed on why she hasn't attended any of the Larry Nassar hearings. She subsequently did go to one, but why haven't you been there? All these other people have been there. She said her schedule was too busy. She couldn't fit it into her schedule. Just piss poor optics. The university did not handle it well. You were like a flower that grew out of a pot of dirt. You were the one guy or gal up there that was pro-victim from day one, before the pressure was there, before people were almost shamed into it. You were out there, you were up front, you were vocal about it. It's been a big campaign calling for you in November, as it should be. I think it's, you're running on your record, and that's the best thing on your record. And I applaud you for that. Did you have challenges up there? Like, what did MSU get wrong? What did you see them getting wrong? And what did you want to do differently up there?
I mean, where do I start? I think
it's a 2-year fiasco.
It's a 2.5 year. I can write a book about what's transpired, really, and nobody's lived it. I saw everybody, for lack of a better term, when everybody got naked at that university in front of me. I saw the way everybody behaved when the bullets were flying. I saw everybody duck for cover, hide behind the lawyers, crawl into their partisan hole, and I just refused to do. I was going to be outward facing. I thought we lacked empathy. I thought we didn't show compassion. The board was tone deaf. Joel made us sound more tone deaf. And I said, screw this. I'm no longer listening to the lawyers, that we need to get out here. It's okay to apologize. I really thought my reaction was common sense. I mean, hey, we're sorry. We're sorry girls got hurt here. And, we need to fix this. And we have a problem. And we want your advice and help along the way. Because if you look at the survivors, they were looking for an apology. They were looking for accountability. They were looking for transparency. Never once did they talk about money. And so it really was the real turning point to me is, I held my town hall, and no other trustee came. 5,000 people came yelling at me, and the moderator lost control. And I felt I saw the rage. I finally felt the rage, because we're volunteers. We're part-time. I'm living in, I'm in Dearborn, and I'm sitting at first thinking to myself, well, how is this my fault? I'm watching, Rachel Den Hollander talk about 1996, and I was like, I was in school then, and so I quickly realized that this is, as Michigan's board's going to realize, and they're realizing, is that this will come to our doorstep, and that I just thought my reaction was just basic common sense, really. And so I became a fierce advocate, and it became very personal meeting. First of all, then I issued a plan of reform. May of 18, I said, you know what? Here's what we need to do to fix it. I went and found the right people to help me, and many of those initiatives we've adopted. We got a creation of the Audit and Risk Committee. We centralized compliance with the Chief Compliance Officer. Now all Board of Trustees have to read all sexual assault reports. Then MSU enters into a joint resolution agreement with the Office of Civil Rights. 2 years later, Okay, and both ESPN and the Free Press acknowledged that many of these things they agreed on were stuff that I recommended 2 years earlier. So it was then I drove out in May of 18 to meet Rachel Den Hollander and meet some of the survivors. And then it became very personal because you humanize them at that point, right? They're not, and it's just something that I just never wavered in. And that, making comments and blasting Engler and doing the things that I needed to do publicly is one thing, but sitting in a room with 7 trustees and law firms and PR firms all alone on an island, telling them you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Our response to this is wrong. That was the more difficult part, but I just never wavered in what I believed in. And since then, everybody's come around and said you're right. Everybody's apologized, held people accountable. We've done a lot of those things, that I've talked about, and I don't care about re-election. Like I never thought of, I didn't work 100 hours a month at a volunteer position thinking about re-election. Doesn't matter. I'm a Spartan. I'll always be a Spartan. That's the main thing to me. I never even thought I'd even be here right now. I really wasn't even going to run again. I wasn't going to run again because I wasn't running with Joel Ferguson, and like Kaylee Lorenz convinced me to run, and Joel was blocked from getting renominated. So, it changed my person. I'm like, I have unfinished business. There are things that I need to see through. And so I hate the whole story. I hate even talking about it. So, it was, but it's something that, you're tested. You're really actually literally one day there's 1,000 cameras in your face, and you're getting asked questions about incidents that happened 20 years earlier, and how do you react as a person? I mean, what do you do? So it's a very interesting time. A lot of people disappointed me. A lot of people ran and hid.
Basically, everybody but you. I mean, Mark Hollis, the athletic director.
I don't, for the life of me, can't even, to this day, some of them that are still there have refused to talk and meet with survivors. I mean, we've settled lawsuits.
There's no exposure there. At this point.
What do we? I mean, it's some of the stuff, the lack of empathy, the lack of compassion, and President Stanley's brought some of that, which is great. And we're moving the university forward. There's been a lot of great changes. There's a lot of Spartans really hurt across the country because of this. We lost a lot of donors, lost a lot of contacts. And so I think we as a university, we still, on that regard, we have to regain the public's trust. We have to regain, and we have to be more transparent. And that's been my theme all along. Why not update people and tell them about everything that's going on? That's why if you look at my plan of reform, I said all of the FOIAs we get should be put on our website. That we should actually reduce. We should tell our administration to not be as stringent as the actual FOIA laws. And we're a public institution. People should know things that they need to know, and burying your head in the sand is not the answer. So I take it as you will. Like I said earlier, and I will stay consistent. Everything I have ever said, I have meant it. Everything. I'm a Democrat. Dan Kelly's a Republican. I've praised him and his leadership publicly because when it came to survivors, it wasn't partisanship. When it comes to Michigan State, it's not partisanship. We got an R and a D by our name, but we're all Spartans. And so, I blasted Joel as a Democrat who protected Engler. Dan Kelly wanted Engler fired. So there were people that, did the right thing. And when you do the right thing, I didn't believe in that partisanship. And I didn't run. I ran for it because it was about as least partisan as there was partisanship. And really for the first 5 years, we never had a partisan vote. We didn't have a partisan vote until Engler came. And when Engler came, Engler started counting to 5 instead of 8. And I told him, John, we like to be unanimous on things. But part of that is, he would count to 5, right? He thinks he's dealing with the legislature, and as long as he's got the majority. And he did it on purpose to divide people. Very, very manipulative in that regard. But anyway, I did what I did. I thought it was common sense. And, whatever happens in November, win or lose, it is what it is. It doesn't matter. I can sleep at night. I have the support of survivors supporting me, and my dad being proud of me, and me like Coach Dantonio has always said to me, stay true to yourself. That's always been his line. And I have, I've stayed true to myself. I've said everything. Let me give you an example. Outside the Lines called me to do an interview, and I declined it. They wanted. I didn't need my 15 minutes of fame, and I still have the text messages to prove it. But I turned them down because I did not like the fact. I thought it was disgusting for them to put Tom Izzo and Mark Dantonio, that picture. Say what you will about Michigan State and what they've handled, and write your story and do your things, but to put that graphic on there, I declined. Because me, it was I had to stay true to myself. I didn't need my 15 minutes of fame. Those are two great men, and not only are they great men, there are people within the university that survivors trust that went to them and said, these two want to do the right thing. They're good people. So it's I was disgusted by ESPN, which is why I won't watch ESPN unless we're playing, of course. But that's about it.
I had an article that I wrote a couple years ago. I had a cartoonist contact me because I was just railing on Michigan State publicly on Twitter, and he wanted to contribute for free a cartoon. The only thing I disagree, and I'll pull it up for you. I don't know how well you can see it from this far. Our audience will be able to see it. The only issue I really had was I didn't like that the cartoonist had Dantonio and Izzo in there, and I almost didn't run it, but the cartoonist explained that he wasn't implicating them in the Nassar situation. It was more just that they were freaking out and concerned about what's going on.
He's full of shit.
Yeah,
because he's implicating them, and that's I have a problem with that.
So and that's fair. And at the end of the day, it was my website. I ran it, so you can have an issue with me too. But I did even beforehand take issue with their inclusion in the graphic. But that graphic had the Board of Trustees on the top left. I don't know if Ben's able to pull it back up at this point, but on the top left, like X's through their eyes, just kind of blindfold, and just like that was the perception of the Board of Trustees, and that was based primarily on Joel Ferguson's commentary, that it was just, we got other stuff going on, I don't want to look at these victims over here, who cares about them. You said that you were not even going to run for re-election here in a few weeks on a ticket shared with Joel Ferguson. You've been pretty public about it. Like, what is the issue with Joel Ferguson in general with this Nassar thing? Do you have issues with him personally?
I just think he's, first of all, he's getting older, and I don't want anybody to have failing health, and I'm not saying he has failing health, but I thought his comments were very destructive, and I thought his lack of empathy and compassion for the survivors was an issue I had. He was involved in obstructing an independent investigation of the Nassar matter that we wanted to release publicly, and he's an impediment to progress. He's yet to meet with a survivor, talk to a survivor, and I just was not interested in 8 more years sitting next to Joel Ferguson.
Do you ever message him during this process? Do you ever send him a text or call him or email and say, what the hell are you doing?
You have no idea.
So yes,
it's a lot worse than that. Yeah, because that's why I went. That's why.
What's worse than that?
Because we would agree. Because there's things I can't say on the show. We would agree. Nobody's going to talk, and he'd go out and say something stupid, and I'd lose my lose my lid, and But at the end of the day, in January of 2008, and then he supported Engler. He voted to keep Engler. He voted to hire Bob Young. Right, Engler wants us to hire a general counsel for 3 years while he's got 6 months left. What kind of fiscal responsibility is that? And then they have, after we fired Bob Young, they Channel 7 has an expose of Joel Ferguson toasting Bob Young and going to dinner with him that night, spending Michigan State's tax money, people's money, and celebrating with a guy that we just fired. So I think optically, that doesn't look good. So there was. Nancy Schlichting resigned. She was on the board. She saw the inner workings of the board. She has endorsed me. Nancy's endorsed me because she sees not only what I've done out, but behind the scenes when the cameras are not on. So I am very honored to have her endorsement. But Joel was one of, she resigned. She's like, I'm not dealing with this. So, he's been, let's just say, it's just time to move on,
Time to move on. So, let's just say Luana K. Simon, for whatever you want to say about her, she sure did build a lot of nice buildings. That's what Joe Ferguson told us in the wake of the Larry Nassar scandal. Is don't ask her about this silly Nassar thing. She was a great fundraiser. It's just the optics.
You can't. You talk that way, and you look like you're just so insensitive and
so cold.
Cold.
Even if it were a one-off victim, but this was like a definition of systemic. just a total clusterfuck.
And then he started defending Engler after Engler said Rachel Den Hollander was taking kickbacks. He starts defending Engler, and you just, you can't coach that. You can't. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. The article that I wrote about it, and I know you hated the cartoon that was submitted to us, but the article I wrote didn't talk about Izzo or Dantonio at all. I don't think they were involved. And there's no evidence for that, despite what ESPN has said and other people have suggested. But my takeaway from that was a lot of what you're talking about, that there was no unity of message. Michigan State, and I talked about it in the article, has a class that they teach at the university right now and did then on crisis management on a corporate and large level, where they're teaching at this school how to handle this. And it's like, I feel like, not you were the outlier, but I feel like the board, university interim president, everyone up there probably should have taken their own class. What that class teaches, if you even look up the curriculum and the outline of it, is how to deal with a crisis on a national level, how to communicate and control the messaging, and it's a lot about damage control. I mean, you can still pull up the course description at Michigan State right now. All that Michigan State got wrong, the biggest being just unity of message, how we're handling this, and accountability, where here's Brian Mosallam saying we should be apologizing, this is terrible, meeting with victims. Here's the trustee next to him saying, this is this Nassar thing, and it's like a total polar opposite approach. Even if you guys disagree and he's flippant privately and you're passionate privately, there has to be, I don't know how much you could have gone to the side of not caring. I don't know what, we're not talking about politics, but.
Look, part of the reason, God, I got so many opinions on that, because, coming out with a canned statement isn't exactly sensitive either.
No.
We are all independently elected. So it's okay to have differences of opinions and make individual statements. It took me years to figure out what's wrong with Michigan State, and there's this, and I'll tell you exactly what's wrong. There's this insular culture. There's this, and I'm talking at the board level, that you can't govern and you can't hold the provost responsible for her actions if you're at Lansing Country Club with her, or socially.
It's the good old boys and girls club kind of thing.
There's this Lansing establishment that circled the wagons around the university and wanted the lawyers to lead the messaging of no comment, no comment, no comment. And then as the story unfolded, I realized the more we said the things that I wanted to say, the more Luana would have had to resign and go sooner. And as you kind of go back and you play back, and it's as time has even gone on, you're still seeing this institutional protectionist mentality, that you have certain trustees that want to govern that don't have these personal relationships, and you have others that are that's their community. They run across these people daily, and it's hard for them when they develop these personal relationships. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I learned.
You broke rank, so you were a maverick.
I was the first I did break rank, yes.
Did you get shit for that? Were they giving you? I mean, were they?
You don't even. I mean, it was yelling
at you.
Yeah, I didn't.
What's the conversation? You better not protect that goddamn sex assault.
You're showboating, and you're you're out there, you're putting yourself on an island, and you're trying to show up your fellow trustees. And I mean, Engler and I went at it. He's like, "You're making the university look stupid." I said, "No."
You were on an island, but they were off the island drowning.
I said, "You're making any university look stupid." I'm reacting to you.
Yes.
I said, "You're making them look stupid because they got their heads in the sand. But you're making me look good. So you want to keep going. You can't shut up." I said, "You see all these changes that we made? We made a lot of great changes. But do you think anybody can hear any of these changes? No, because you can't shut up. And so until you do, you're going to make them look bad, because I'm not going to shut up."
And you did the right thing on a human level, but even if you were a cold-hearted bastard up there as a trustee, and you were just the most evil...
But you're being told by the lawyers, don't you dare talk, don't you dare talk, don't you dare meet with them, because you're going to ruin the litigation, you're going to ruin, we're in negotiation, we're in mediation, and I said to myself, we're going to pay anyway. What's wrong with saying we're sorry?
Sometimes you just have to run into the buzzsaw. And I get the bean counter's perspective. But my point is, even if you are an evil person and your only goal is to protect the institution of Michigan State, no matter come hell or high water, you'll cross any moral line. I don't care about victims or whatever. Even if that's your perception, it was still handled wrong. Because Michigan State is far worse off for having handled it like they did in those moments than they would have been had they faked what was genuine for you. Even if I were just a cold-hearted bastard advising them, I would be like, okay, look, this Brian guy, he's a sap. He actually cares about women getting digitally penetrated by their doctor. You know, what a silly goofball he is for caring.
But Katie said in my video, she emailed me, and I was the only trustee to respond. That was long before the cameras.
You were the only one that reacted. She wrote the entire board, and she went 1 for 8. You were the one.
I mean, but that was before the cameras went on. The cameras didn't go on until January of 18. So
yeah.
Because I genuinely felt and that's the difference. I think is that when you fundamentally believe something, nobody's getting you off of what you believe. It doesn't matter if 7, trustees and 2 PR firms and 9 law firms, and it just doesn't matter. Nobody's getting you off of what you believe. And if you stay true to yourself, and I'm a volunteer. I have my own business. That's not my job. And then I have a daughter, and so there are things that I took into consideration that I felt, this is how I really feel. I'm not going to sit and listen to the lawyers, and so. For what it's worth, it caused me a ton of backlash internally, and it is what it is. I mean, I'm very proud of the position that I took. I'm very proud to have their support, and I get, like I said, I win, I lose. It doesn't matter. I'll always be a Spartan. I made my dad proud, and I can sleep at night. I have a clear conscience because there are people that were in that room that they knew what the right thing to do was. They knew it, and they didn't. They hid, and that I'll never forget. That say what you will about Joel, he's just in another world sometimes, but there are people that I knew privately would say the things to me how they really felt that wouldn't say it publicly, and that really bothered me.
Oh, the principled stand was the right way to go. I mean, at the end of the day, it was botched even if you didn't care about these victims. It's self-evident why you should if you're a human being, but they botched it even if they were cold-hearted because they could have protected the institution a lot better even if it was a dog and pony show, and they didn't do that. So they did the wrong thing, whether you were the evil henchman in the movie or the good guy.
But you protect the institution by acknowledging your failures and acknowledging that we have a culture problem as it relates to accountability,
yes,
as it relates to transparency. When I say that, that's what I mean. That's what I meant by it. And acknowledging these things, America is very forgiving, and working with survivors and coming up with solutions on how to fix things, and humanizing, like that's how you protect the institution. You don't look at a dollar value and say, if we say this, it's going to cost us this, because there's a reputational damage, like this independent investigation that we were doing. Like I developed the rapport with Rachel and Sterling and Sarah Klein, who are 2 of my lawyers, to come and do this investigation with us, for us to hire a firm together and issue this report. We were gonna issue this report of a firm that they agreed to, and they were gonna stand by us, and they were gonna say, that this was a legitimate process, and that would have gave Michigan State billions of dollars of PR that nothing else could have bought them.
Yeah, and you can't quantify that.
And we had 4 trustees block it, and that's when I began to think about, what are they? What is going on here? What am I missing? Why would anybody? And it's that Lansing establishment culture.
Is it still there, that culture?
Yeah, part of the whole.
So the issue has not been fixed. Could Larry Nassar happen again?
We're moving in the right direction with a new nominee that's standing next to me running for office.
Do you think it could happen again? Not the same apples to apples.
I don't, because anything can happen, right?
Right.
But we've.
You think the controls are in place that
yes,
would not be allowed to continue?
So a lot of people would regard my suggestions as kind of the framework of what, but we have people there much smarter than I am, and so the controls have been put in place. Compliance has been centralized. People can now bypass the president to come to the board directly. They have that authority, to put these controls. We've got a third outside monitor hired an outside independent monitor.
More checks and balances.
More
here.
checks and balances there.
So you can't run into that brick wall. It's like if this one person says no.
That's what we learned as a board, right? Is that before these were very ceremonial roles in nature and ribbon cutting and take pictures, and these are very serious roles. These roles require tremendous fiduciary oversight of the university. You have to be engaged. It's your job to hold the administration responsible. Now we have to read all those sexual assault reports. Now we have to look at all the audit functions and see. Now we have to make sure, so these roles have changed dramatically. It's not when I first started. It was let's feed them and keep them quiet and keep everybody happy and get the trustees out of the way. But we have a much more engaged board, much more active board. And the controls are in place. We're working on getting better. Every day we're getting better. I mean, nothing's perfect. But my goal, that's why I say I have unfinished business. I would love to see Michigan State become the national model for health and wellness. Student health and wellness.
I mean, Michigan State's near and dear to me, obviously. Die hard and deeply care about the university. When I first got there, I used to just walk the campus at night alone, like in the middle of the night, just walk around. I just love the campus. No one loves Michigan State more than I do. There was a period where I was embarrassed by the university, and it was a repeated embarrassment that it kept renewing like every other day in the news cycle. So, maybe out of the bounds of an interview, but I don't care. It is a human issue. Just thank you for what you did up there in protecting the institution and doing the right thing. You had the approach that I wish they all had, that people were so frustrated that no one else did. And I thought that took a lot of courage. It may be self-evident to you, but when you're in the firestorm, you're in the old Boys and Girls Club, and you're the outlier, it couldn't have been comfortable. So just, as a Spartan, thank you for protecting that institution that I care about.
You don't need to thank me. That's my job. That's what I was elected to do. I work for you.
Seven people were too and didn't do it. So, on that board. So
well, we learned a lot about a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's why we're on our fifth president, fourth general counsel, third AD, third provost, and if you think about my 8 years there, right? I mean, 2 Rose Bowl, a Rose Bowl, a Cotton Bowl, playoffs, 2 Big Ten championships, 4 basketball, Big Ten, 3 basketball Big Ten championships, 2 Final Fours, Larry Nassar scandal, 5 presidents, 4. I mean, it's nuts. 4 general counsels, 3 ADs, a global pandemic. I mean, you name it. For a volunteer, I've done it all. And
hell of a volunteer.
I mean, it's a lot of work. You've seen a lot. It's a lot of work.
So we'll lighten it up a little bit. So we do this fun thing at the end. We always wrap. It's called speed round, kind of like word association, but you can go more than one word. I mean, you can give me a couple sentences, but short and sweet. We just kind of rip through them. So we'll start. I'm going to give you a name or ask you a quick question. You just say a couple sentences on it, or whatever comes to mind. So are we ready, Ben? We're ready. Let's start. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Michigan State head basketball coach Tom Izzo. What do you think of Tom Izzo?
Oh, wears his heart on his sleeve. Maniacally brilliant.
Maniacally brilliant. That's good. I like that. The most passionate guy I've ever met. Great guy. Love Izzo.
I love him. He cares so much about the university. You have no idea.
Yeah. Lives and dies with it for sure. We talked about him very briefly. Departed former Michigan State athletic director, the most successful in my lifetime, Mark Hollis. What do you think of Mark Hollis?
I think Mark Hollis was a marketing genius. I think we've had great leadership under his success. I'm a fighter. I don't, he retired. And one thing that we learned about, and I'll say this, is that these are not thrones. We're all temporary placeholders of an institution that lives in perpetuity. And as powerful as Luana was, as powerful as Mark Hollis was, when you're not number one, you're not in charge at the end of the day. And trustees have to realize that we're temporary placeholders. These titles are fake. They're not real. You're not important, but your title is. And so when you're there, you must act in that capacity. And I know you said one sentence, but
no, you can go on. There's no. I'm not going to buzz you. But Hollis, are you saying that he failed to meet those standards and expectations?
I just think he retired abruptly and left, and it did not leave a good look. It did not leave a good look for his legacy. And I asked him why, and he said he couldn't control the message because the lawyers wouldn't let him. I mean, but there's a lot of things, So I thought he did some great things. I thought he did some great things. I thought he should have had a number 2 ready to go and develop some of the people underneath him. But Mark Hollis did some great things, but ultimately, you become a casualty in a war sometimes. And
it's not one of the top 25 reasons to hate Larry Nassar, but it's somewhere way down the list for me. Like, just that I think Mark Hollis, I don't know if he'd still be there, would have been there a little bit longer. Just great with the Nike stuff, forming that relationship. It was already in place, but building that, becoming one of the flagship schools for Nike, and Michigan State's playing on aircraft carriers and military bases. And from my understanding, maybe you can correct me, but that was mostly a Mark Hollis operation.
It is, but Tom Izzo has to agree. And so,
Izzo gets credit too, but Mark Hollis was brilliant.
He's done brilliant ideas, marketing ideas, and you got to give him credit for a lot of things. Did a great job. There was a lot of success under his tenure, But, you look at Kathy Klages was also in the athletic department. So at the end of the day, the buck stops somewhere, right?
That's true.
And that's the problem I had as a trustee. Everybody kept passing the buck. Nobody would answer a question. And finally, that's when I finally called for the general counsel's resignation that first January and demanded an independent investigation because I couldn't get my hands on. Nobody wanted to take responsibility for anything. And I'm not saying anybody covered anything up. It's at the end of the day, there is accountability that you have to take. And that's our job, to hold people accountable. And clearly we weren't. And we learned a valuable lesson. And
Hollis was, I guess, part of that. But that's
he really, he didn't, we didn't even know who Larry Nassar was. It wasn't like he really didn't. If you read his interview, he had very little interaction.
This perception that he was like having lunch with Dantonio in the cafeteria, it's just,
Well, he's very close to Mark and Tom, and they made a great trio. And I know they met with Luana every quarter.
I was talking about Nassar. I'm saying there was a perception that it was just ridiculous, but that was out there. It's
that's what ESPN. That's why I had an issue with ESPN Outside the Lines, because they tried to tie all these things together and make this an overall. Look. I met with our top sexual assault leaders on campus. And I point blank asked them, a lot of them, I said, are Mark and Tom, are they? Tell me about them. Because I know how they are. I know the type of people they are. And every one of them said they are good people generally, and they want to do the right thing, that, it's a systemic problem across the nation, and that athletes are entitled. And, Larry Nassar heightened everything that's happened in East Lansing. So
it was such a bad job by Michigan State to have that year. Was it 2018 where Izzo is getting asked about this stuff at every press conference, and they're just badgering him and abusing him. And it's because no one else would fill in these blanks. Tom Izzo was the spokesman
face,
for the whole.
Coach D got to come out and say what he had to say, but he wasn't in season.
Yeah.
And so,
a little bit off the hook.
Here's Tom Izzo, has arguably probably one of his most talented teams ever. They were 30-3, right?
Yeah.
Just a miserable year they had, because that's all they want to talk about. You know? And so you look right now. U of M's going to go through a very, very similar thing. And I've been asked a lot. Is it karma? Do they deserve, because they were making fun of us? And I said, no, nobody deserves this. So I put a couple of regents over there in touch with Rachel Den Hollander and with some of the survivors, and said, don't make the same mistakes we made. COVID's taken you off the front page, right? You've gotten lucky there. Yeah. I don't care what ESPN's done. I know that's irrelevant. This is real life. This is not a game. Work with the survivors and come up with some long-term solutions, and be transparent. Be transparent. Don't run and hide, because you never want to see that happen anywhere.
They may not deserve it, but it is a rude awakening and a cautionary tale for what you say. And
it can happen anywhere. And
right.
Humility, like as Coach D said, pride comes before the fall. And so it's a valuable lesson I think we all learned. And, we're seeing these medical professionals, these trusted positions happen all over the country, right? Ohio State's doctor, USC's doctor.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
I felt bad myself, Brian, because, I used to make fun of Penn State for Sandusky, and just what an embarrassment that whole situation was.
I got a ton of email from Penn State folks. It's karma because Luana was president of the committee.
It bit me. I'm telling you right now on the air to our thousands of viewers. I
had Paterno's son calling me, telling me how to handle it, and I'm like, really?
It should not be rivalry fodder. I was more just highly critical and just saying what scumbags I thought those people were for defending the program so blindly, which, I guess I would still defend. I don't think I ever took it to the way Michigan fans did, but like to where it's rivalry fodder where you're bringing it up out of nowhere and you're talking about a game and it's like, hey, how's Nassar you doing and stuff like that. I mean, it's a rude awakening for them, but we'll get it back on the tracks here. A little bit lighter than the Larry Nassar case. I'm sad that everything's closing in East Lansing from when I was there. Best restaurant in East Lansing that no longer exists from your days there, after, because most of them have closed.
Panchero's still open?
No. Well, there's one in Okemos, but the one in
Lou and Harry's still open, right?
Luhas is still open. Panchero's is closed on Grand River.
Believe it or not, Brody Hall was voted the best restaurant in East Lansing.
Brody Hall?
Have you ever eaten at Brody?
Like the cafeteria?
Yeah.
No.
They have multiple stations of sushi.
I don't think it closed though, right? So that was your favorite.
Yeah,
that's your favorite spot. Did you ever go to Flats? Flats Grill was like a block from my apartment.
No.
Oh, it was only open like 6 years, but it was just the best. It was kind of, I don't even know what, it was a very eclectic, like kind of like flatbreads, quesadilla type stuff, but it wasn't Mexican. It was all over the place. It was awesome, but everything's closed there. I go up to East Lansing only a couple times a year now, pre-COVID, and it's like it's a a city every time I go up there.
Oh, it's amazing that what they're doing. And,
it's great, but it's sad. It's because I'm nostalgic.
I got I miss Dooley's.
Yeah, Dooley's. That's before my time, but I'm
Rick's and Landshark are still there, right?
Yeah,
I think
they're still. I know Rick's is. I think Rick's will be there 300 years from now. It might be the one place still standing. That place has like a permanent immunity. It's been exposed to every germ and disease known to mankind.
I mean, if you wanna build some immunity.
Yeah,
spend a couple weeks.
Spend a couple nights at Rick's. I think a nuclear bomb could go off in East Lansing, and Rick's would be the only thing standing. It's immune to all.
What's funny is that when I first got elected, it was I was just nostalgic, right? I was driving around in 2013. It was January and it was cold and it was a Saturday night, and I drove by Rick's and there was nobody in line, and I said, "Wow, kids have changed," because that was our generation.
Wrapped around the corner.
We didn't care if it was us, a torrential downpour. We didn't care if it was, an avalanche of snow. We were waiting to get in. So it's a different generation.
I didn't spend a lot of time in the women's bathroom at Rick's. So, for our female listeners, don't fact check me on this, but the men's bathroom at Rick's, the bathroom stalls did not have doors. If you're ever at a bar where the stalls don't have doors, that's probably not a great place to be. I don't know who would want to do that business at the bar in East Lansing, but if you were so inclined, maybe they've since put doors on, but when I was there in 2010, there were no doors on those stalls. So.
Look, right now, more importantly, is that we need our kids up there to socially distance and take this COVID seriously.
There's the political answer.
We've
right
broken.
There. Yeah,
but we're breaking. We got a 12.9% positivity rate of the athletic department. I don't know how much is football.
So it's not a hoax. The COVID's not a hoax.
COVID is not. I actually know people that got sick.
So do I. I run a nursing home. Believe me, I can't.
Yeah, it's not a hoax. But that's what's funny. That's why I just did a political ad about my daughter and ice cream, because you can't talk hoax, you can't talk football, you can't talk vaccine, you can't talk mask, you can't talk online schooling, you can't talk anything, and you can't. Somebody wants to shake your hand. If you don't shake their hand, they could get mad. I mean, it's just a crazy, crazy time. So. My daughter is saying endorse me because when MSU wins, I get her ice cream,
If you promise to get doors on the stalls at Rick's men's bathroom, you got my vote.
How about if I open the MSU dairy store? Push to open the MSU dairy store.
See, that'll get you a lot of votes talking about ice cream, because that's a sad moment.
Makes people happy because everybody's fighting. Everybody's fighting about everything.
Everyone needs to calm down. And then we've talked about that show to death. I know you've watched every second of every show we've ever done, Brian, so you haven't missed a thing. But, I mean, we've talked again. It's like I have friends on the right, friends on the left. And
are you finding your friends that are on the right and on the left arguing with each other, really getting mad at each other?
More left to right. The right, my conservative friends, and I consider myself a moderate. I voted for Gretchen Whitmer. I voted for Barack Obama. I also voted for John McCain in 2008. So I'm kind of all over the place, and I'm convincible. But my friends on the right tend to make fun of my lefty friends more, just kind of oh, you're a liberal crybaby. The ones on the left are a little more intense. It goes to a dark place where it's I will literally not be friends with you or ever speak with you again if you vote for Donald Trump. And it's a little darker on the left. That's my experience with my social circle,
Interesting.
What I've seen. And that's a perfect segue for the speed round. Not who you want to win. I know who you want to win. You're a Democrat. But who will win in November? Donald Trump, the incumbent, or the challenger, Joe Biden? Who will win?
Who won Michigan?
Who's going to win the election, the national election? Who's going to be the president on January 21st, 2021?
I firmly believe that, I think I really, in my heart of hearts, believe that Biden will win the popular vote. Everything else that's going on and, the games that they're going to play, I don't know. I couldn't tell you, if you believe the polling. If you look at Vegas, if you look at 538, Biden is ahead. But now we have debates coming up. So here's what I believe. I believe there are very few undecideds, and it's just about getting your vote out.
You're actually talking to one of them. I don't know what I'm going to do. I didn't vote top of the ticket in 2016 because I absolutely deplored both candidates. I think Donald Trump is
so that year in
and
Michigan, 2016, was the largest undervote amount in the history of the state. Meaning undervote is when you vote for everybody else but the presidency.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
So
I contributed to that.
So that's you had two very disliked candidates.
And I'm a passionate voter. I've never missed an election. I always go. I believe in it. I think it's vitally important. I feel very American when I go. It's like people did die for this, for me to be able to do this.
My dad's a veteran, and so it must. So my dad. So it's my dad. My dad is a veteran. Yeah.
And you're on ballot, so you're right in it. At the end of the day, I could not vote for either one. Now, I did do a write-in. I wrote in for Jesse Ventura. I donated, who had obviously no chance and was not running, but Jesse Ventura is...
he was the governor of Minnesota, though, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. And I thought a good governor...
An interesting state. Minnesota's very interesting, right? They're the only urban core still that's the majority's white.
Yes. The thing that I liked about Jesse Ventura, though, and you had a lot of similarities with Jesse Ventura, is when he first got in the government as the governor of Minnesota... He had all these meetings his staff had set up with a bunch of lobbyists. And the first day he's in office, he said, I didn't set these up. Cancel. I don't want to meet with any lobbyists. Like, I work for the people. I'm not working for the oil lobby or the dairy lobby. I don't tell him no. And he would not take meetings with lobbyists in that entire term. And, but where he's similar to you is it's just, I don't care about, the politics or playing these games. It's like, what was I elected to do and serve the people? And I'm a big Jesse Ventura fan. Doesn't mean I agree with everything he said. He thinks 9/11 was maybe an inside job. He's not fully on that, but he says there's questions there. I think that's crazy. So I'm not endorsing everything. But, in terms of this upcoming election, I only donated to one candidate this term, and this is all public record. Anyone can Google it. Tulsi Gabbard was a Democrat. So, I have friends that think I'm like a crazy right-wing crackpot, and, I have friends on the right that think I'm too liberal, so that's always how it works, right? But I am a true undecided where I'm telling you right now, there's a chance I might vote for Donald Trump, there's a chance I might vote for Joe Biden, or there's a chance that I might write in the ineligible because he's too young, Ben Augusta, my producer, to win the presidency. I don't know what I'm going to do.
So I'm obviously 100% all the way in with Joe Biden. But my background's interesting because I'm a financial advisor, right? So I own a wealth management firm. So, fiscally, I lean right. I'm a little more conservative, which I think helps us in this times in Michigan State, our financial crisis. Socially, I lean left. I don't care. Like, everybody deserves the same rights I deserve.
So why don't you like Donald Trump then? Because he's a social liberal.
I think the problem with Trump is the division, the way he's divided the country. Right, because if you look at his fiscal and his monetary policy, now you can argue all day long. How much of it went to Wall Street and how much of it went to Main Street?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of facts to back it up because that's what I do all day. Is the stock market. But I think the dog whistling, and the racial element and the looting and the way he talks and just I think he appeals to his base of that white nationalist and then there are a lot of business people that tell me, Brian, look, I'm just going to plug my nose and vote for him. I don't like what he says. I don't, but what he does, fiscally and monetarily, I agree with. So I've never seen this country more divided. And I'll give you a perfect example, right? World War II, Pearl Harbor, 9/11, the country united around their president, right?
Yep.
George Bush was the president. Everybody united around George Bush. Now you got people, carrying AK-47s and Confederate flags and swastikas and burning absentee ballots and drinking bleach. And it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And the president's job's to rise above it. And, his whole thing is the media
He should
treats...
unite the country. The president should unite. And then you're not going to unite everybody. I
No.
get it, right? But, unite the country. And I think that's the part that's really... what's really bothered me is some of the stuff that he does I can't explain to my kids. They're like, Dad, how can the president say these things and do these things? And anytime that happens, I have a problem with that. So that's my biggest, one of my biggest gripes.
I think it's going to be close. I have friends on both
I think
sides
it's
that
going to
are...
be very close.
People are saying, my lefty friends are saying, Biden by 10 points. And my righty friends are saying, Trump's going to blow him out.
In
It's
Michigan
like,
or where?
In the country.
My election's in Michigan.
I'm talking about in the country.
But see, him being up 10 points in the country means nothing because those polls are all bullshit because it's
a state battle.
It's a state battle.
Yeah.
So in Michigan, if you look right now, he's up anywhere from 5 to 11, depending on who you talk to. But do I believe it? I don't think so. But if 5.2, 5.3 million people vote, the Democrats will win because there's a million more Democrats in the state of Michigan. Believe it or not.
So you're a diehard Spartan. We've discussed it ad nauseum. Moving on to the next one. The University of Michigan. Where do you stand on the University of Michigan? What do you think? Do you hate them like so many Spartans do?
Football-wise?
The sport, not the people, but just the teams. Like, do you watch Michigan State? Do you just...
I mean, if we were playing Russia, I would cheer for Russia over Michigan.
Oh, there you go.
Look, it's I love the rivalry. I got a lot of very close friends over there, and plus I played, so.
Yeah.
But it's just a rivalry. It's a game.
Yeah.
All right. But when it comes to sex abuse and the scandal, no.
It's off the table. Yeah.
I don't wish that on them. I mean, I want to help them. You know. So there's a lot of great people at that school and from that school. I love John Beilein. John Beilein's class act. Izzo loves John Beilein.
I hated how much I liked John Beilein.
Look, why do I like this guy so much?
I wanted to dislike him, but he's a great guy.
Yeah, and I mean, and so like you have a ton of respect. I love Lloyd Carr. Lloyd and I have always been very good friends. I love Lloyd Carr's first class. So it's but yeah, you root against, it's a rivalry. So
on the field, you hate him, and then it's my best friend, best man at my wedding was a University of Michigan athlete, and obviously went there, and loves Michigan, and wears it on his sleeve.
They're not the problem. It's the person it's the Walmarter.
Well, that's true.
We have the problem.
That's true, but let's face it, though, we have our own baggage too. I mean, our fan base is no picnic sometimes too, and it's funny because I've been criticized for that repeatedly by members of the Michigan State fan base.
That you're too high, too low, like
that. I'm too critical of Michigan State, and there's people that are such slappies that they think they can do absolutely no wrong, and people were. The big thing that got me into, I guess, hot water, I mean, I didn't feel it. I frankly didn't care. But the perception was that I was in hot water, was there were members of Michigan State's recruiting class for football that were on Twitter that, just committed Mel Tucker's first class on the way. None of them have even signed yet. They were on Twitter talking trash about U of M and saying, we're going to take that belt and we're taking Paul Bunyan back. And all I said was, I'm very old school with rivalries. We played the game, got our ass kicked in Ann Arbor. For that year, you should lay low. You don't get to talk trash. The whole point of playing the game is you play for bragging rights for that year. In my head, no one has to play by my rules, but in my head, you play for bragging rights for that year. Basketball's a little different because you can play 2, 3, 4 times in a year. But football, that one game, if Michigan State wins, I'm going to be teasing my Michigan fans for 365 days if I want, and they shouldn't be able to say anything. But when it's on the other hat, shoes on the other foot, I got to shut my mouth. And I didn't like that guys that hadn't even signed here, that were not even on campus yet, were talking trash. Now, these are kids, but my issue was the fan base that was retweeting this stuff and saying, oh, I love the swagger. And I just had a general comment that said, I think we should be laying low here. We didn't like when Michigan did this, when Dantonio was pounding them every year, and they're talking in the offseason about recruiting rankings, and they're calling us little brother and all this. Michigan State fan base, there's plenty of crazy people in that group too. So
I think losing makes you humble. I think
it should,
and it's this thing ebbs and flows, and humility comes in many forms. And you didn't see any of our current players talking, and those that when they get here, when they play and they lose, they probably won't talk either.
I agree with that. I'm talking about the fan base, though. I mean,
the fan
subject
base
being,
is the fan base, and you're not gonna. There are some you're just not gonna. It is what it is. I mean, you can't take it. Like I've been through the Twitter war of getting just blown up by people. And you just, and you just learn to deal with it. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it is. And some people they're very passionate about their school. I don't like when it becomes personal, like you make personal comments. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think the Nassar matter should ever be joked about. I don't think the Dr. Anderson matter should ever be joked about. There are just things that should be off limits between fan bases. And if that's the case, then Twitter's going to be Twitter.
Yeah, well, Twitter will always be Twitter, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So we'll wrap here. A final one. So you can go as long as you want. We hit on him a little bit. John Engler's interim presidency at Michigan State. Not, just John Engler, but that period. John Engler's handling of that.
Where do I start? So I voted for him. First of all, I'll own it. I voted for him. I took a lot of heat for it, and because he came in and said he's not coming in unless it's unanimous. So they had this thing wired. He had the votes, and I was risking defunding the university. We were at the legislature was risking our funding, which would have been, I believe, a 22% increase in tuition, 12% decrease in salary. So I took the bullet. Because if we get defunded, who takes the heat?
Yeah, you're over a barrel.
It's the kids. It's the kids and their parents and working families in Michigan. So I took the bullet. I own it. And I quickly realized what a mistake it was. And that he doesn't take any advice, and he's the smartest guy in the room, and he's, in essence, has a lot of elements of Trump. He just can't help himself. And he just says he inflamed situations. And he would purposely do it the week of a board meeting because he loved it. He loved the attention.
He just liked the tension, you think?
He loves the attention. He loved the tension. He loved dividing the trustees. He was mean-spirited. He was very mean-spirited. Was it a means to an end for him? Or did he just enjoy the tension in He
and of itself?
enjoyed the tension. He enjoyed the attention and tension. But I would, that was nonpartisan, though. It wasn't.
Well, it shouldn't have been, but it was.
But I would watch. I was watching, I'd watch the way he interact with the faculty and the employees and the staff and things that he would do when the cameras weren't on, and he would berate them, and the way he talked to them and intimidate and bully kids, and just a mean-spirited individual. And then when he gavelled down Kaylee Lorenz telling her time was up, and then when he said Rachel was taking kickbacks, I go, that's it, we're done.
There were a lot of audible gasps during that time where
he viewed them as litigants.
Yeah.
He's the governor, and he can do what he wants, and they're the legislature, and kind of. He just forgot that he's you're a university president. You have bosses, right? And that that you're a president. You have to take shots. You can't fire back, and you have to show some empathy and some compassion, and those were things that he lacked, and it got to the point where it became very crystal clear that the longer we kept him on, the worse it was going to get. And so then elections happened. I got the votes, and the rest is history. Speaking
of getting the votes, Brian Mosallam, MSU trustee, running for re-election for an 8-year term. You're up in a few weeks. I mean, is there anything you want to throw out there? We have thousands of people watch the show in Michigan every time we do it. Is there anything you want to say to these people before we send you off back to Dearborn? And
it's all about the ice cream. If we, because I think
indoors at Rick's.
Indoors at Rick's. I think if there's anything that we've learned is that I've been tested, right? I've been tested in times of crisis, and that. It is a tremendous honor to have survivors support me and their parents endorse me. Think about that. Coming out of Nassar. In 2018, the world was calling for our resignation. 2.5 years later, the very same group of girls and their parents are endorsing me. I think speaks volumes. Did I make mistakes along the way? Absolutely. Sure did. But you're going to, with me, I was open, honest, and transparent. I've led reform. I've pushed reform. And I think I've done the right things. And I was very fortunate to get the Free Press endorsement. It says I've earned the right to get another 8 years to see my reform through. And Republican, Democrat, we're Spartans. we're Spartans, and I would love your support heading into the election.
I appreciate you appearing on our show, and you have been an accessible person in your entire term there by all accounts, and I think that's important. For whatever it's worth, I'm voting for you. And not just because you appeared in studio here today, but I mean just the way you handled that Nassar thing. And I thought that at the time, thank God for you, because you were the only one. So I think you did a great job, and I wish you well. I'd love to have you back. Win, lose, or draw in that election, and
I'm pretty confident if I lose, I won't be getting many calls from the media next year.
You can be my co-host. I'll have you in every day, no matter what Mike Vellani says.
I think the lesson from this all is that these are titles, right? Like if you don't, you never want to lose your sense of reality. Like I know who the minute I lose this title will always stand by me, and I know those that will never call me back. And as long as you don't lose that sense of reality, and you know who you are, and you know what your real support is, and realize that XYZ is calling you because he likes you, not because you're a trustee, and vice versa. I think you'll be fine in the long run.
You're not going to be getting any Christmas cards from Joel Ferguson or John Engler, but you might get one from the Spiro Avenue show.
Well,
Brian,
I will say Joel Ferguson, they asked him if he was endorsing me, and he said no. So that in itself is an endorsement.
Yeah, right.
So,
the rejection is a ringing endorsement.
Yeah.
So Brian Mosallam, MSU trustee. I'm not going to tell you to vote for him. You heard him. Make your own decision. But I think you did a great job with everything with the Nassar scenario and what a disaster that was across the board. Basically, you were the one outlier. So we appreciate you joining us, giving us a lot of insight on Dantonio, Luke Fickell, who may or may not be a waffling flake. That was up for interpretation. We'll leave that up to the listeners, I guess. Ben Augusta, our producer, he's awesome. This is the earliest he's ever been awake, especially on a Sunday.
That's not true.
Well, okay. It's in the top 3 for earliest he's ever been awake.
Since when?
Since March, before COVID.
Pre-COVID.
My other job, yeah.
Yeah, well, he's a night owl. It's not. He's not a lazy guy. It's just he'll be up like in my studio working. I'll have gone to bed 4 hours ago, and I just hear the door slam, and I think I'm being robbed, and it's like, oh, it's just Ben leaving at 2:30 in the morning. So, yeah, Ben's a hound. Appreciate everything Ben's doing for us. We actually added a member of our team. Eric Williamson is our director of digital media going forward. He was the one that said that he didn't want you to have a water bottle on the table. So Brian, I'm gonna get a very angry email from him about the fact that I didn't tell you to remove the water bottle off the table. So
a lot of electronics I could screw up here if it slips.
No, it's okay, but you look like you work out, man. If Eric comes knocking, I'm calling you for support. This has been the Spiro Avenue Show. Thank you to Brian Mosallam, MSU trustee, for joining us. It's been a blast, and I'd love to have you back, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. Take care. Go White. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you soon. A couple more shows on the horizon. Remember, these things are all TBD because my wife could go into labor at any minute. I'd like to thank her for not going into labor during the show because I enjoyed the conversation. She's technically due in 5 days, but we're in that window. So maybe we'll see you, maybe we won't, but you'll see us eventually. Thank you to all for listening. And this has been the Spiro Avenue Show. Thank you again, Brian.
My pleasure.
All right.